It's Friday the 19th of the 9th, 2025. The time is 23 minutes past 8 British, and there are very many F1 centric threads at which we need to pull. It's round 17, Baku, Azerbaijan, and there's sandbagging all over the shop on the back of FP2. We'll talk about Maximilian Verstappen saying that he might have a chance. Helmut Marko double underlining that thesis, saying that Monza wasn't just an anomaly, that Red Bull have turned the corner at the altar of double brake. So too, we'll talk about McLaren and their doddiness. What are we doing here? World Constructors Championships, and neither one of OJP nor Lando Norris can keep it out the barrier. So too, we'll talk about Scuderia Ferrari, stealthy pick for quali and potentially even stealthier pick for the race win, particularly in the hands of Charles Leclerc. Mark Hughes of the race has called them out for sandbagging. We'll talk about Lewis Hamilton too, who's been very effusive in his praise of Scuderia Ferrari. Unprecedented settings, normally negative, normally downbeat. However, on the back of putting it on the top of the timesheet, Mr. Sir Lewis Hamilton was very, very positive. We'll talk about all of the aforementioned. But first up, got to talk about Isack Hadjar. I know we spoke about it the other day, that this dude is now the favourite to get the promotion. But it feels like the rumour and the gossip mill in and amongst the paddock at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix has done one of these. The all and sundry are now saying that Isack Hadjar has the whip hand, that he will be in the car alongside Maximilian Verstappen as at 2026 Oracle Red Bull Racing. The head seat at the table. Oh, the humanity. Do you think about that, chat? Is it a poison chalice, or should Isack Hadjar take that position? Surely if he thinks he's going to be a world champion, if he even so much as harbours aspirations to win a championship of the driver's variety, then he needs to take that seat. You know what I mean? He's got to see himself as a different to Alex Albon, as Checo Perez, Danny Rick, Pierre Gasly, Tsunoda-san, Liam Lawson most recently, Checo Perez. He's got to see himself as different. Why? Because none of the aforementioned had it in them, the minerals requisite to becoming a champion. I think he'll take the position. I think he has to take the position, mandatory in his contract, very different from the Checo Perez contract, which mandated he would only be an Oracle Red Bull Racing driver. Ergo, they could not demote him to Racing Bulls. Isack Hadjar is Red Bull Racing family driver. Ergo, they can promote and demote him at will. So Isack Hadjar can tell you whatever he wants that he hasn't heard. He doesn't need to hear, because Helmut Marko and Lauren Mekies can do what they want. Point Isack Hadjar or whichever Red Bull Racing family team they want. Again, for the avoidance of doubt, it feels and looks and sounds like all and sundry in the paddock pre the Azerbaijan Grand Prix that Isack Hadjar has the whip hand, that he will be driving alongside Maximilian Verstappen. What does that mean for Racing Bulls? Well, it means that in all probability, Tsunoda-san, done. They keep saying that they're waiting to see Helmut Marko. Behave yourself. You couldn't say that with a straight face. You must surely be talking with tongue very firmly in cheek, Helmut Marko. You never fancied Tsunoda-san. He was always Honda's boy more than Red Bull Racing. Take away the $20 million that Honda are giving Red Bull with a view to put Tsunoda-san in that seat alongside Maximilian Verstappen, and you take away Tsunoda-san, he will no longer be a driver. Don't believe me? Well, let's have this conversation this time next year and see where Tsunoda-san is. I would put forth this supposition as my hypothesis. If Tsunoda isn't at Aston Martin, then he will not be in F1. He's Honda's guy, not Red Bull Racing. In Racing Bulls, and you can take this one to the bank. Hold me to it. In the Racing Bulls car, it will be one Arvid Lindblad alongside one Liam Lawson. Now, the speculation is that they'll make that announcement in and around October in the upcoming weeks, but I think it's already decided, and Helmut Marko is telling us as much. Should we talk about FP2? There's a lot going on. George Russell, King George Russell of Kingsley, Norfolk, pulling a sickie. How very dare he? Leaving the Azerbaijan Baku paddock early, not feeling very well. And as well he might not be, because that Mercedes has been nowhere right. 47.174 long run in FP2 in the hands of Kimi Antonelli. I mean, that's not a million miles away, but 2/10 is sufficient in the hands of King George. A 147.06 in long run. But again, that's a tenth away from Oscar Piastri. And Oscar Piastri, by the way, did not look fast. Mark Hughes has written an article where he's done one of these. He's like, hang on, what's going on with OJP? Meant to be championship contender, do you know what I mean? He could very easily walk away with his maiden championship of the Drivers' Variety this year. But where is his pace? He didn't look fantastic, and then he yeeted it into the barrier shortly after his teammate Lando Norris did exactly what he did at Saudi Arabia Jeddah Corniche and pushed it too far over the edge. Now look, Lando Norris naysayers will be celebrating. I told you that dude was a mistake merchant, a bottle job. Yet again, there is proof positive. Why can't he keep it out the barrier? Is that Lando Norris or is that modern day Jean Alesi? I cannot tell the difference between the two. Lando Norris just taking GQ pictures, do you know what I mean? Modelling settings, Vogue settings, props to him. But surely Lando Norris, some would say you've got a championship to fight for, chap. You are 31 points behind Oscar in said championship. So maybe then it might be time to hunker down and focus. Just maybe a little bit. Mark Hughes says that you need to give Lando and Oscar some grace. That what they were dealing with is an MCL 3.9 that was very difficult to manage, that it was understeery through sector 2, the 90-degree low minimum speed, medium duration turns, snap oversteer on the quicker turns. And to mitigate for that, the rumour is, the word on the F1 curb is that Andrea Stella et al. Have tapped in, dialed in more downforce points into that McLaren as far as the rear wing. And you can see that as far as the top speed. They are nowhere, losing anywhere up to 10 kilometers per hour on the bloody straights to the likes of Max and Charles in particular, who are running low downforce wings. Now, context going into tomorrow, FP3 is important. Here's what we do know. Max Verstappen is quite pleased with his low to medium downforce wing, just as he was at Monza. Why? Because he can handle the car, manage it in and on around the limits of adhesion. That's Max Verstappen's specialty, particularly when it gets into sector 2. That being said, he's one of only a couple drivers. This is the only track where Max Verstappen has a losing record head-to-head with his teammate in qualifying. Insane. Max Verstappen 4-3. That's how much he's been beaten. Checo Perez beat him 2 seasons back-to-back in qualifying around this track. If Max Verstappen, 4-time champion, GOAT, setting some say Mount Rushmore of F1, first round Hall of Fame, if he has a weakness as far as the 24 tracks on the current calendar, you could put forth the supposition that this would be it if past is prologue. But that being said, do Red Bull even give him the car? Well, they seem to think that he has one. Max Verstappen normally, and Red Bull normally in FP, are doing one of these. Head in hands, they're a gazillion miles away from the race lead, from the session lead. This time, however, a 146.5. Not too bad on those soft compound tyres. Bearing in mind, soft compound tyres, they're all saving the mediums, because mediums, people think are going to be the tyre on which they should be qualifying. Premium option, as we used to use the terminology, 146.6. If you imagine for a second that Red Bull have time in hand on the long runs, that's only 0.3 behind Lewis Hamilton, who, by the way, Mark Hughes speculates had his engine turned up to 1,000. I'm going to read some things out. Listen, context is important around here. You remember last year the dichotomy went something like this. Tack on a low to medium force downforce wing, and then you get yourself an advantage in terms of qualifying. But in the race, around a long track that's super demanding, where Pirelli have brought softer compound tyres as versus the equivalent fixture last year, it's going to get techie for you over the course of a 53 lap race distance. This is a techie track, lots of braking, lots of high speed, well, the bloody biggest, longest straight, and then massive aggressive braking zones. Ergo, it's going to be one of those where you want to mitigate for tyre deg. Tyre deg is going to be a massive thing, and I only say that to say this. What do you choose then, chap? Do you go lower downforce as far as your rear wing to make sure you maximise for your qualifying grid position and then try and manage it during the race? Do you know what I mean? Do like Charles Leclerc tried to do last year to Oscar Jack Piastri, get your elbows out. Do you know what I mean? Manage the tyres in real time. Or do you tack on more downforce as have done McLaren, OJP, Lewis Hamilton of Ferrari, with a view to optimise for your race pace and minimise for deck. This is the dichotomy. I don't know the answer, chat, but if you're Charles Leclerc, again, he tacked on a lower downforce, low to medium downforce wing, lower than his teammate, the one that they call Sir Lewis Hamilton, and to great effect, some say. Wasn't too shabby. Here are Marcuse's FP2 long run averages. He has Charles Leclerc on the soft compound tyres, which apparently is the slower of the two, on a 146.212. That's a tenth quicker on average than Sir Lewis Hamilton on a 146.3. He completed that FP2 long run on mediums. Albon in a Williams on 46.5. Verstappen did a 46.5 on softs. Also, Sainz on a 46.8. Piastri on a 46.9 softs. What is going on then with that McLaren? What is going on with OJP? Why do they keep making some mistakes? Now, some are saying that this is OJP doing OJP things, building his way, playing his way into the Baku Azerbaijan Grand Prix. But I'm arguing that looks a bit off to me. Maybe they are sandbagging. Maybe they have turned down all their engines. But that looks and feels a little bit rogue. I would put forth then that McLaren have some work to be doing. But here's what we know per the legend that is Marcuse, written an article on the race, and he puts forth that the bankable sandbagging is coming from not the papaya coloured team, but the Scuderia Ferrari one, the red car with the yellow badge and the black prancing horse atop. Here's what he says. Quote, Hamilton's first attack lap on new softs was compromised by traffic at turn 10, but the tow he received down the Caspian stretch from Pierre Gasly's Alpine was worth a very clunky quarter of a second, 0.25. In a perfect world, the ideal solution would probably be the higher downforce wing to be super fast through the slow turn sector 2 90-degree settings, and then a Pierre Gasly like tow to overcome the penalty of that down the Caspian stretch in qualifying. Without that tow, however, the low wing is likely the fast over the course of one lap, but there is an equal and opposite downside, of course, in the race owing to tyre degradation. He continues, does Hughes, and this is where it gets techie. That Lewis was quicker over the course of one lap. Timesheet topping in FP2 might not mean too much, writes Marcuse. He argues that the power unit settings do not appear to be the same on the lap comparison, in that Lewis Hamilton without a tow and despite exiting turn 16 slower than Charles Leclerc, yet and still is travelling 6 kilometers per hour quicker as they go through the kink of turn 18. That suggests, argues Marcuse of the race, that Ferrari was running Lewis Hamilton with a higher power map than Charles Leclerc, probably in an attempt to muddy the waters for the rivals, aka sandbag. The team will know the lap time value of the power unit settings and therefore how low the low and medium downforce configuration really compare. I think Ferrari played the blinder here, chat. If Marcuse, legend of the space, for the avoidance of doubt, all F1 journos are created equally. Some are created more equal than others. If Charles Leclerc had his power unit turned down and was still able to keep as near as makes no difference pace with Sir Lewis Hamilton in the session topping time, I think it could get a bit techie, chat. Genuinely, especially when you realise that if past his prologue, of the past 5 times when we've had qualifying sessions, paid sessions around Baku, tell me which one of those drivers has nailed it each and every single time. He has a name, and his name is modern day journalese, aka Charles Leclerc. Invincible as near as makes no difference around Baku, so long as he can keep it out of the barrier. Ferrari sandbagging, chat. Take that one to the bank, since Marcuse is telling us as much. He says what is clear, what we can take to the bank as far as this circumstance, is that Ferrari historically are really quick around here. It's engine braking settings, What's the type of turn and circumstance that Scuderia always go well around? Super long straights, super aggressive brakes. Why were they so quick around Monaco? Because it's corners like that, low minimum speed, medium duration, the Rascassers of this world, that they do really well on. The engine torque curve means that they can accelerate really quickly out of them. Charles Leclerc loves that, Sir Lewis Hamilton too, and they can leverage that to their advantage, notwithstanding Maximilian Verstappen, if he can get himself an RB21 capable of winning a Baku underneath him. Marcus says this: what's clear is that Ferrari always quick around this track, where its engine braking traits help it rotate beautifully in the slow sections. The exact same reason it's also traditionally super quick in Monaco has hit the ground running. Scuderia Ferrari have the whip hand, if not in the hands of Sir Lewis Hamilton, definitely in the hands of Charles Leclerc, who's taken 4 poles from 4 over the past 4 years at Baku. He's quick on the C5, the Ferrari mediums, and the C6 soft, quick on the long runs and quick in single laps, quick with Charles Leclerc and quick with Sir Lewis Hamilton, especially if you consider the fact that Charles Leclerc in all probability had his engine turned down to 7 or 8 out of 10. Lewis's was up to 12. Ergo, they've done their due diligence and are gathering information in real time. Scuderia Ferrari then have the whip hand. Here's what Marcus says about the lower to medium downforce wing dichotomy. Which one do you choose? Marcus says history tells us that a super low downforce rear wing is probably faster over the contradictory demands of a Baku lap than a conventional medium to low wing, but the latter will probably be quicker over a race stint. So Charles then is going for the low at the moment, as at the time of writing in FP2, went for the lower downforce wing with a view to drop it on pole and then get his elbows out, manage for tyre degradation in real time. And I think that might be smart. God tier level race IQ from Scuderia Ferrari and Charles Leclerc all of a sudden. What am I saying? Oh, the humanity. Is this a glitch in the matrix? How am I praising Scuderia Ferrari? This makes no sense. Marcus continues, there's a choice to be made involving game theory about which of the two wings will give a better race result, a higher grid position and a defensive race, or a lower grid position and an attacking race. It all rather depends upon how many other cars might get between those two options on the grid, hence the game theory. It's going to get techier than techie things. Listen, if I'm Ferrari, I'm putting all my eggs in the pole position basket because he can do it, eh? He's a specialist around Baku. 4 from the last 4. 5 of the last 5, including sprint races. I will take that. And then you come to find out, in terms of maximum velocity through the speed trap, notwithstanding Charles Leclerc's lower downforce wing and notwithstanding Lewis Hamilton's mistake, that as near as makes no difference, they're the same through the speed trap. And Lewis Hamilton had his power unit up to 12. 325 kilometres was Lewis through the speed trap. Charles Leclerc 328. What happens then when they dial Charles Leclerc's car and power unit up to 12? I think Charles Leclerc might have the whip hand. Historically, God tier levels of pace around here. And I think this time tomorrow we might be talking about Charles Leclerc on pole. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's going to get techier than techie things. How do you like yourselves? Some F1.